Resonance FM 104.4.
Hello, this is the Clear Spot on Resonance 104.4 FM. My name's Tom Wallace, and today I'm joined with Dan and Davey from the Hekate sound system.
Good evening.
Guys.
Evening.
Hiya. It's turning out to be a good evening anyway. But that's all we're going to mention about the football. Hekate sound system has been going 10 years, and we just started off there with a track on the Praxis label. What was that, Dan?
That was the Praxis 1X, and this is the Scaremonger EP. The reason started the show with that is Praxis is probably one of the most important influences, at least in the beginnings of Hekate sound system. when we started going to raves, there were free parties happening all over London, but the thing that musically stood out for me was the Dead by Dawn club that happened in the 121 Squat in Brixton.
And that was down on Railton Road in Brixton, and it was in a basement of a squat, wasn't it? Of a kind of anarchist centre.
Yeah, I mean, the actual room for dancing was absolutely tiny.
It was more of a sort of torture chamber. It sort of had a very sweaty, evil, dark feeling to it, and you went down some stairs like you were going onto the set of Evil Dead into the cellar, and then lo and behold there was horrors the likes of which you never would have heard before.
And it's kind of odd that it was on the old Brixton front line where there was all these old Rastafarian squats that had happened in the sort of 70s and 80s, and then it's kind of been again redefined in the 90s, yeah. But it's a seminal club. And shall we hear a bit about... there was a sort of EP or sort of album, really, of the whole... when the club kind of ended, wasn't there?
Yeah, that was what Christoph Fringhelli, who is the owner of Praxis, the label, had decided to bring out when the club unfortunately had to end. It featured a number of artists that had played at the club throughout the years that it was open for, and it's a great album with a lot of different stuff on it.
Okay, we'll hear a bit of an excerpt from one of the beginning and one of the sides. I think it's quite funny because the guy's voice... I don't think people really talk like this anymore, so have a listen.
Yeah, as I was saying, little panic in the house. Yeah, don't forget, first Saturday in February, Dead by Dawn is back. One of the few decent underground clubs in London. Playing a wide mixture of sounds. Hard, weird, soft, experimental, even a bit of jungle. And that's going to be taking first Saturday of next month down at the 121. Remember, there's only 3 to go. So get down there.
So it's a little excerpt there from the Dead by Dawn album, which really kind of changed a lot of things in London, perhaps, maybe, in the long term, if you look back at it, maybe.
I'm not sure about changing things. It was definitely inspiring to a number of different people, and it definitely gave a chance for lots of people to hear people like Shitsuo from Germany, who eventually featured on the DHR label, DJ Scud, and DJ Aphasic, who later went on to form the Ambush label, which we'll play some stuff a bit later. And it was a great place more to meet and talk and listen rather than dance. It didn't totally manage to mix the idea of the free party with the idea of experimental music.
Well, I mean, I liked it precisely because it was an extremely ambiguous sort of area where you could do anything you wanted in. And when we did a experimental night a few years later, there we had like Nomex cellophaning a microphone into his mouth. He wrapped cellophane around his head. Do you remember that? And so ran around the room screaming.
I'm not sure that was Nomex. I think he later went on to play a record with a drill.
Yeah, that was right. What did he do? He put the drill through, like, off-centre into the record.
Yeah, and then put a needle from the record.
He had a disembodied stylus he was holding in the air. So it made, it went speeding up and slowing down, sort of flanging. But he was doing it live, holding a drill and a disembodied stylus in the air. Stylus still connected to the sound system. And you could get away with things like that. You wouldn't be able to do that in, Heaven or The End or whatever, So it was... I mean, in a way, yeah, it wasn't a sweating dance floor in the stereotypical sense, but there was a lot of kind of like cerebral juices and sort of oral penetration going on, in the ears, I mean. And
so it's complete artistic freedom.
Yeah,
space
in a
for that,
sense, yeah.
Unrestrained. Okay, so I think we're going to hear another track, which is, well, we just have to sort of kind of guess if it's the right one, I think. Let's have a go.
is The Fire is the Centre by Shitness and the Jackal, which for me is much more the flavour that they were pumping out at the Dead by Dawn parties. I think why Dead by Dawn what proved so important was because it was linked with a number of things that were going on at the time. There were another number of other clubs that were playing extreme music. Hellraiser was one of them, but I remembered being constantly hard and fast in terms of its music policy, which was really not what you'd get at free parties. We'd go out to free parties and shout gabba at the DJ and annoy them all night, and not that they'd ever put any on. And I think that these two things together, the idea of free parties and the music that we experienced at places like Dead by Dawn and Hellraiser, led to the need for us to bring about another sound system.
No, certainly. And it's, I mean, also it's much harder these days to kind of conceive of that idea, because the sort of landscape of London has changed a lot. I mean, do you think, because I mean, 10 years ago, the sort of London free party scene was kind of a lot different. Do you think it's influenced you at all?
To be honest, I'm not sure that's actually fair. I think in one place...
Sort of devil's advocate here.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think if any place in the world, London has stayed the same, whereas a lot of other places have changed. I mean, at the time that these parties were happening, then, which is about 10 years ago, the Criminal Justice Act had just been brought into effect, and basically it was impossible to get away with doing a outdoor party or technical in England. So maybe that concentrated things in terms of what was happening with free parties, but the apathy of Londoners, for me, hasn't changed over 10 years.
Yeah, I mean, since then, I mean, there were outdoor parties, and don't forget, you know, the Surrey lot, and that's important, as I think that there was,
the Fear Teachers,
the Surrey lot, we mean, like, Fear Teachers who became Core Dispensing Unit, who are now Dead Silence Syndicate, who've now got a live drum and bass band, little big up there. But, you know, basically, they represented, in a way, what was going on out of London after Castle Morton, which was just really cool little parties in the woods, and perhaps, you know, the urban equivalent on a much more experimental level was Railton Road and what's going on in Brixton. I, for one, actually slightly disagree with Dan. I used to like some of the sound systems that were going on 10 years ago, particularly like Vox Populi, who used to play a real variety of music, ranging from reggae to sort of annoying trance to good jungle and everything. I mean, it was a really various scene. I think the thing that's missing now really is like there's most of the sound systems now seem to play really boring trance.
But I mean, have you actually been out in the last a few months to a free party?
I've been finishing my degree, so no.
Well, it certainly has changed in some ways, and maybe in some ways not. No.
I mean, what I think I was trying to aim at, although maybe I was being a bit general, was that for me there were more important things happening out on the European mainland at this time, and for me, a lot of the really important crews, people like Mutoid Waste and Spiral Tribe, Bedlam, had already gone out to Europe at this point. So, although, there were Vox Pop, I mean, I was unlucky that I only actually attended one Vox Pop party, so I can't really talk about them as a crew, but for me, after that sort of period, there were the odd good party in London, but it never even depended on the crew that were doing it. I remember one classic example where we did a party in, I think it was Tottenham, about 5 years ago, and we had us in one room, Bedlam had a massive rig and a setup in a main room, and Ambition had this really wicked dub rig, and we got no one coming to the party because there was a trance party happening in central London. And for me, that just sums up the London ravers. They don't, for me, there's so much stuff happening in London that they get to be quite apathetic.
It's very blasé, you know. let alone leaving the country and actually sort of roughing it in you know, on the trains and sort of, you know, getting nicked by Czech police. They won't even cross, you know, boroughs without whinging, you know.
Certainly won't go outside the M25.
Yeah, no way.
In a hurry.
No, no need their passport and all that business. You know.
Okay, so we're just going to carry on with some more music. What's coming up next?
This is New Skin, which is the first record I ever made. It was produced by Kevin, who used to tour with the Spiral Tribe sound system, and after deciding that France had much too much hard tech, wanted to create a label that was something slightly different.
Okay, here we go. This is the Clear Spot on Resonance 104.4 FM. My name's Tom Ellis. I'm joined by Dan and Davey Hekate. We're just discussing London and the free party scene, and that was your first record, Dan.
Yeah, I mean, I did cuss a bit heavily the whole London scene there. I do have to say there is a serious wealth of musicians, both on the underground and in the commercial scene, that live in London. Probably more than in any place in Europe, and I suppose that's what distresses me about the blasé-ness of the London public. But that's not to say that over the years here there hasn't been amazing parties. It's just, for me, I don't think you can really determine when a great party is going to happen. I mean, a classic example is that Bullring party that happened.
Yeah, which was obviously one of the most extraordinary events, which was, well, for me, I can't even remember when it was. But, you know, if I remembered it, I wasn't there, etc. But it was in something like 99, and there was a whole load of homeless people living in a little cardboard village in a pedestrian subway next to Waterloo Station. The council determined they should be kicked out, and a bunch of well-meaning sound system people, including, I think, Mainline, Glenn and Dave and all that from Mainline, they decided to set up a last party for the homeless as they were going to be evicted. And as dawn broke over Waterloo, this is a public walkway that you can look down into from the pavement. You know, Japanese tourists were coming off the Eurostar and like traipsing around with all their luggage and whatever, staring down at this bunch of, I mean, it must have been several hundred completely hanging ravers, covered in, you know, filth, squat filth, and rolling around cardboard boxes with loads of homeless people. I remember one guy offering me a raw onion for breakfast, which was particularly, you know, symbolic moment. But yeah, so, and that was one of the greatest parties, and that was completely impromptu, disorganised. Music lineup wasn't really well thought through, but that was something that was really, I mean, I've never seen anything like that in any other city in Europe. And like Dan says, you know, you can't plan those things. They just,
well, it's the sort of power of a kind of reclaimed space and in a kind of autonomous space. I mean, that even today when that happens, it looks back to the original kind of idea of holding a free party, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, I just think that at that time, the major things that were going on in Europe were in the mainland, especially in France, and particularly with Spiral Tribe. A lot is still talked about them, but I'm afraid it needs to be. They were such a big collective on such a mission with so many musicians doing live sets, and it did really influence the music in both good and bad ways. Listen to Cyrus 23.
When you hear this signal,
Okay, so that's a bit of the 4/4 there from that's a Spiral Tribe record.
Yeah, I believe that this record was written by Simon Carter, who now does stuff under the name of Crystal Distortion. What was so great about watching Spiral Tribe was, you know, they turned out with like 4 or 5, 6 live sets throughout the night of interesting and varying techno, but generally techno. And they had stuff like they'd borrow a circus tent from people, and one really memorable occasion for me was the Czech Tech that happened 10 years ago. It was the first technival we ever took the Hekate sound system to, and I think we played about 2 hours of music. We couldn't get the rig to work at all. We tried everything we knew. We had asked every engineer on site to come over and give us a hand. Everyone with their varying opinion. Eventually...
So it was an esteemed European debut, was it?
Yeah, I mean...
flannel.
But the actual technical was amazing. Spiral Tribe themselves had a massive circus tent, and
so by this time they'd sort of been banned from the UK, really.
Yeah, I mean this was after Castle Morton, and they'd decided to go on the road, and it was when you went into their area, it really caught you. But I have to say that this did have a derogatory effect on the whole scene as a whole, because they were so inspiring. People wanted to follow them. They wanted to make what they made. And 10 years down the line, we still see people churning out Spiral Tribe copies. And they'd love to make a record that sounded just like that, because they think that's what everyone wants.
Just a little quick hot tip. If you ever need to make money, buy like lots of really bad, cheap Spiral vinyl in London and take it to France. And I made quite a bit doing that, and it did become a kind of four to the floor, you know, dance floor cult, which is, you know, in a way, all power to them, and you know, I've got an enormous amount of respect for them. Like that, they did the first ever, you know, the first free party I went to was a Spiral free party, and it was a truly mind-blowing experience, even before anything had been ingested, and it was, you know, unforgettable. And seeing that many people on the sort of the same. Seemed to be on the same kind of buzz. So many thousands and thousands of people in a warehouse in Caledonian Road was really, you know, for no one who's seen that kind of really hardcore underground rave feeling, it's really awe-inspiring. It felt like an anarchic community that was held together by this beat, and that was how order. You know, I didn't see one fight, and that was probably because of the doorman. But you know, at the time, it felt mystical.
Yeah, no, totally, very much.
Or was it the drugs?
What?
No, but I think it's fair to say that even at this time, there were people who were trying to break musical boundaries. Apart from Christoph Ringhelli and the whole Praxis crew, there was an Italian sound system who, for me, were truly awe-inspiring, called Plasmodio, and they were fronted by a rather big man called Sasha, who didn't give a flying fuck what he played, what beats he mixed with what genres were broken, and he wouldn't care if he was going on to play on a rig that had been playing techno all night. He'd go on and mash it up as best he could, and it was only a shame that a year after we started the sound system, having done a couple of parties with him and some of his crew, he went too far in India and died. This was quite saddening, but it was something that was always on the cards. There's some people who are so extreme, so experimental, that something like that, you know, it's a natural thing to happen to them, and although sad, it's the way of life.
So shall we hear some of his music then?
Let's hear some of his rather brilliant beats.
In memory of Sasha.
Yes.
So that there was a track by Sasha, not the perfumed dollhouse DJ, but another one.
No, he's often known as Head Cleaner.
Right, okay. This is the Clear Spot on Resonance 104.4 FM. We're celebrating 10 years of the Hekate sound system with Dan and Davey Hekate. And what are we going to hear next, Davey?
Well, that was, as Dan pointed out, Sasha, who's this extraordinary Italian chap, who basically was up for doing anything. You know, he was really up for pushing all the boundaries musically. And for me, we were mentioned earlier, kind of the 4/4 beat fascism.
Yeah, the tyranny.
The tyranny that sort of seemed to dominate the dance floor and turn everyone into spasmodic zombies. And what attracted me to Hekate and the crew when I first met them, which was in '96, was the fact that they were determined to sort of subvert that boring hegemony of just repetitive bass lines. And I was coming more I hadn't really heard Sasha and people like that, and I was coming more from listening to Warp and Reflex records and things like that, and a lot of reggae and dub, which is all, of course, broken up music, so beat-wise. And this track is an Oteka. It's a remix of their own track of Bass Cadet. It's called Bass Cadet Mix, and anyone who can find this, it's an amazing track. Big sound system tune.
Back in '94.
Maybe, that was when the album came out.
Seems quite early, doesn't it?
Yeah, it does. It's an awesome track.
Okay, yeah.
Very creepy.
Orteka.
Yeah. It's got a slow builder.
There's an early track there from Orteka back in '94. I'm joined by Dan and Davey from Hekate. So what are we going to hear next?
Well, I don't know what we're going to hear next, but I just like to big up Oteka for making that tune, one of the all-time greatest. Dan asked me to repeat my comment that big bass line sounds like Satan farting, and it is an amazing tune. Anyone get their hands on it, please. Yeah, big up yourselves, Oteka. I mean, that for us, I think, people like Oteka and Aphex Twin as well were on the commercial side of things pushing really extraordinary music. It was quite hard to go out to a club and hear. And my motivation, personally speaking, for getting involved with the sound system was I really wanted to hear this stuff played on big sounds and mixed, interestingly.
But I think it's quite funny to note that even the people who were making it didn't even think that it was to be played on sound systems. I remember a few years ago I met Aphex Twin in a club, and he told me, there might be some gabba later, as if like he was waiting. It was rather boring techno at the time, and that really struck me as quite weird. And I said to him, but your industrial music's much harder than gabba. And he said, is it, sort of thing, as if the industrial stuff they were making was more for listening, and we at Hekate always felt that it was more for playing. And even though over the years we've had times when there's been one or two ravers who weren't even sure what they were dancing to, we've always stuck to our guns and played what we believe to be the best electronic music stuff.
I think it's interesting, and people's tastes that, with the whole kind of resampling and mash-up style of music, and the kind of brokenness of dance music, and the sort of fracturing of it all becoming very fashionable. I mean, and obviously enabled more and more by technology. I mean, in a sense, I can remember even we used to run a sort of experimental electronica, like even in 2000, and even then, just playing something that didn't have any beats in it for a bit was still a bit, it was difficult to kind of sell. I mean, even when it was in Hoxton and Aphex Twin was in the bar, it still wasn't quite acceptable. Even then, I think it's only in the last few years.
I remember someone hitting their head against the wall at one of our parties. Just like say hello to Nigel if he's listening, and saying, "Your music sounds like this," as he hit his head on the wall. And we took that as an enormous compliment and turned the volume up, hoping he'd dash his brains out.
Yeah, I mean, there's been quite numerous amusing occasions. I remember getting threatened with a hammer when I played a certain set. Just after Sasha had died, I wanted to commemorate his passing with the most broken thing I could at this Technival in Spain. We'd joined up with Fuck 'Em, which was a breakaway from Spiral Tribe, and one of the people was just so offended that I'd play such music that they really did want to hurt me. It has to be said as a footnote, I'm now great friends with this person. He listens very much to music that's very fucked up, so...
Okay, we better press on with the music then. Before we put some more people off their dinners.
Yeah, sorry. Oops.
So what's that track we're listening to there then?
That's the first Hex record, Slamityville, the track's called, and I wrote that with Red Max. And this was still before the time of computers, where we tried to get as many machines as possible in one room and sat there for 3 days until the track was finished. And I think it was worth the sleepless nights there.
No, totally. I thought I was going completely wrong there. I thought I'd sent it off on a space mission at one point.
You should have seen the ravers when that got dropped. I remember we were talking earlier about, trying to get, the full fascism, etc. Like, I remember playing this kind of music, and even less extreme stuff in France when Spirals were really doing well. And I remember this French guy coming up to me. I was dropping a jungle tune, and he went, "How do I dance to this? What is that?" So I came out and gave him a John Travolta demonstration. And they really didn't, because we wanted to talk a bit about Spirals again, didn't you, Dan?
Yeah, I think it's important, as well as talking about the beginning, to talk about the end of Spiral Tribe, because that for me sort of highlights a lot where it went wrong. What happened is that, having got a bit bored, I suppose, of creating these temporary autonomous zones and doing these what were wicked parties in Europe, one of the Spirals had the great idea of taking them to America to make pop stars of everybody. What they did, though, is they decided that they weren't going to pay for any of their musicians or bass crew who were and did make the vibe up for them, and eventually they just went with the people that had money, and they flopped in America. The Americans didn't want free parties. They thought that if it was free, then it must be bad and not worth it, and that's why people were giving the party away for free. And once they came back, it disintegrated. And I think it's important to keep doing creating temporary autonomous zones, and it's important to do things in Europe, because although, it might be nice to travel, and I personally would love to sit on a beach in South America with the rig blasting away in the background, the people who are really into industrial music, who really understand what electronic music is, they live here in Europe. The music comes from what we're surrounded by, and
so keep it local.
Yeah, this fact was demonstrated really clearly by Tomahawk, who are not a really nice bunch of guys from France, and they ambitiously took their sound system to Africa. And there was a classic moment in the film where they interviewed these African guys, and they went like, what do you think of our music? And the African guy said, well, you come from an industrial country. And all the Africans just laughed. They didn't understand it. And Dan's absolutely right. I think in a certain sense you can spread out, but if we've learned anything from our colonial experiences as Englishmen, you can't just go and implant yourself elsewhere and expect to be understood. It just doesn't work.
So the lessons really is to keep it local, but to be carry on being inspired by the temporary autonomous area zone.
Yeah,
which is a great legacy from just the original idea of a squat party, and it's still a very vibrant idea to carry on and follow through.
I think you can sum it up really pithily by saying that essentially these temporary autonomous zones are a reaction against a sort of capital, a capitalist system that makes space private, and it's basically reclaiming that space. And
some of the Americans couldn't get, obviously, with the Spiral zone.
Well, they were too extreme. The Africans were like, what's this reclaiming space about? It's everyone's.
I do think it's important to say, although it's good to stay local, it's really important to travel, and now that's summed up by the fact that the most active members in Hekate aren't English, they're French and Italians, and that's because through travelling we've been able to meet these people, and the idea of experimenting is not something that's just British, it's European wide, and there's people everywhere making music that wants to cross boundaries and break people's minds open.
No, sure. I'm sure the strength of resonance is through the fact that people have come to London, and people have been prepared to travel, and people want to come and be in an experimental radio station. That's in a sense, there's a parallel there with our station and your sound system, people travelling and getting involved in a particular kind of experimentation.
Obviously, it's important to keep doing events on home turf and keep doing stuff to bring your own friends together and to give an outlet for people in cities like London.
Which brings us on to the fact that you're doing a party tomorrow night then.
Yeah, I mean, it's actually a bit late, as the Hekate party that happened 10 years ago was on the Maybank holiday and happened in London Fields. Jibber were on one floor and Chiba sound system were on another. Unfortunately, they don't exist anymore, so they won't be joining us tomorrow in the industrial wasteland of Hackney. But we do have 2 rooms of musical mayhem and distortion.
And who's going to be playing? Or is that not really the point? I mean,
there's going to be a selection of live sets and from our own people like Henry Set, Marcolino.
Your good self, Dan.
Dan?
Don't come on, don't be modest.
And there's another one called Jan.
Jan, who will be appearing later tonight at the Hekate show that we're going to destroy your brain and airwaves with later on. He'll be spinning some tunes tonight and, in course, tomorrow. The good man Covert, he's coming up to spin some tunes from his Brighton turf. And we've got Hekate favourites like my brother Dybbuk and the man like Grief, who will be doing some hip-hop.
Fine scratching. I mean, yeah, so if you just head up to Hackney tomorrow night, Hackney Wick Station, and hopefully you'll run into someone, look on the website. That's www.hekate, that's hekate.co.uk, hekate.co.uk.
And we've got time for one more tune, yeah?
If we've only got time for one more tune...
one quick one.
I think it's important.
There's time for two tunes. So.
Yeah,
2 tunes.
Can we just...
Well, let's just have a bit of this. Okay, coming on to the end of the show now. I'm going to play out with some more new Hekate tunes. Thanks to Dan and Davey for coming in. This has been the Clear Spot. And, sorry, what was this tune we've just heard?
Well, that was Lauren's Attractor. It's an early practice, isn't it?
Yep, and a classic tune. There's a lot more that we wanted to play. As usual, times got ahead of us. The last thing that we want to do is drop one of Jan's tunes. This is his first ever record and has come out on the label Hex. This is number 6. Cellify is the name of the EP, which means what are you up to, or can you do it?
Okay, we'll be moving on to that in a sec. Just to let you know what's going on. This is a Red Zero Radio special, this Clear Spot, and it's the beginning of a whole weekend of quite hardcore music. Tonight from 1 till 7 in the morning we've got, as Dan just been explaining, 6 hours of sets from guests who have arrived in London to play. So that's at 1 o'clock. Tomorrow night, sort of Friends of Red Zero featuring Scheme Boy and Randomoise from Camber, DJ C, Forensics and Electric Life Forms. And then on Saturday night at 1, We've got live sets recorded at the No Fixed Abode night, probably also in Hackney, and featuring Crumble, Cardo Pusher, Rotator, FZV, Freddy Frogs, lots of people. And
I'd just like to put out an advert for the NFA party, the Concrete Boots, that's going to be happening on the Thames Beach side, as long as we're enjoying good weather, and that will be Saturday 17th, and you'll be listening there to live sets from the NFA crew, that bitch Ronin, and some of the Hekate boys.
And El Kano.
And girls.
Okay, and now we go straight into the Jan Hekate record. Thank you, good night.
Good evening, you listen to the Wild Adventures in Modern Music on Resonance 104.4 FM. Here's Captain Beefheart.
Dear soul!